Paltrocast. Am I correct? You're on Pacific time?
Oh, yes, yes, yeah. So morning for me. Thanks.
And how is the day going aside from having to do interviews with people who ask you how the comedy sausage is made?
It's going well. Yeah, I had a nice little breakfast and have my coffee ready, so couldn't be better, honestly. Thank you
Got
for
it.
asking.
So
How's yours?
nonstop but good because I'm talking to a great comedian, but that's actually one of the first things that I wanted to know. What are you professionally speaking? Because there's the comedian thing because you have a special that came out last month, but then again, you've also written for people and projects. Then there's the voiceover stuff. Then there's the on-camera acting. What are you?
Sure, lots of yeah, no, I think I primarily am a comedian, because I think everything centers around comedy. But I think because I started in stand-up and it is kind of multidisciplinary and you're performing, but you're also writing what you're performing, and you're also, I guess figuring out how to make that into like a cohesive thing. I feel like, it's splintered into other things. And I think probably what I primarily like have found recently that I enjoy is writing. And like specifically in a writer's room, I think that's a really fun place to be and place where I like to be. But yeah, I think comedian is probably first and foremost.
Got it. So Funt is the latest special. Some comics, when they do a special, that's kind of retiring the material, and then other people use it and they keep evolving it, and they're going to do it for the next 2 years. For you, is Funt, was that the material being retired?
Pretty much. I think occasionally some of the topics I'll still like I kind of had already been working on them even post the recording and then like continuing to evolve that. But yeah, for the most part I feel like 75% very, very retired and then the last 25 maybe slightly, evolving a little bit. But yeah, I think trying to definitely retire a lot because I mean it was my first special, so I think a lot of times for that it's like a lot of accrued material in my case for like years. So it's definitely it was time, and I'm really glad I had the like actual event to kind of send it off and like see it go into the sunset and then move on.
Got it. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Brian from Comedy Dynamics a few times,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and he seems very hands off as long as you don't break curfew and you deliver all the deliverables on time. So I'm assuming it was another positive experience for you with Comedy Dynamics.
Oh yeah, 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 they were great. And yeah, I think like really let us do our thing. And then, if yeah, making sure that all the pieces of course came in on the right time and everything. But yeah, I it was definitely like trusting us to do what we do best.
Sure. Now, are you done with compliments for the day, or can you still take them?
That's a great question. No, I mean always open to compliments.
Okay, cool. So one of the intriguing things about you, besides the credits, besides the skill, is the educational background,
Sure.
the Ivy League background, and all that. And being a person who always read books about comedy and all that, I knew that a lot of the Simpsons, SNL people, late night
Mhm.
writers, etc., were Harvard or Ivy League people in general. For you, where was the Ivy League strong educational development versus the I'm going to be in comedy? For example, did you know about all the National Lampoon
Oh,
stuff
right.
and all that when you were studying?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I did like going in, let's see, I knew I had already started stand up in high school, kind of. So I went into college knowing like, oh, this is a thing I like doing extracurricularly and it's a fun little party trick, But I was studying computer science and knew that I probably wanted to go into tech and, see what happens there. But then I think going to that school, I noticed how, yeah, I mean, I had kind of heard about the Harvard Lampoon going in and how all like, if you look at the alumni list, it was a lot of Simpsons writers, Futurama, who, whatever, there's always somebody in the mix. Conan O'Brien, I think, is probably one of the most famous. But yeah, I think like because that was sort of a thing, like I ended up joining early on, and I think that gave me more of the encouragement to maybe pursue it as a career. Otherwise, I probably would have been more interested in doing tech because, it like TV, I didn't really have anybody in my family doing it or anything. So I felt like such a pipe dream, like, you won't be able to go into entertainment. Sure, you can do stand up at night and that's fun, but that's going to be hard to break into too. Like I think it felt very much like who knows how people get there. But once joining the Lampoon and then meeting more people who, recent grads, so it was like if I was a freshman and then a senior graduated and went on to go write for SNL or something, it was like, oh wow, I knew that person. And that's really cool that that's even a possibility. So I think it just made it more real and human. And that was like a huge privilege of like going to that school and like having those peers, right? Um,
Right.
so yeah, so I think I did become more see it more as a possibility. And then as I got made my way through college, it was like, oh, I might actually want to do this for sure. And if so, that means no job after graduating. That means, figuring out like that maybe safer career in tech where I would have immediately had health insurance and a, place to land and something to tell the family. It was definitely like a switch. But yeah, lucky for me, I think I had a good support system who was like, okay, like my parents were kind of like, all right, if you really want to do this, get graduate, but also, we can, like I moved home initially and I am from outside of Los Angeles. So that's a huge privilege, right? Being able to like have that safety net. And yeah. And then, I think of course the idea being like, I was still working freelance in tech a little bit to support myself and actually make some additional cash because even as a writer's assistant, which was my first job, you're not making a ton. So yeah, it was like I think I wouldn't have been able to see that as more of a possibility if I hadn't gone there, even though also going to a school like that, people expect you maybe to have a better plan after graduating. So yeah.
You actually answered three different things I was going to ask.
Oh,
And
great.
that's a good thing. The
That's
first
why I
one was,
ramble.
did you have your paying your dues job within the industry, like being a writer's assistant, answering phones at the Comedy Store, running the box office at a Second City kind of like place? And the answer was yes. And the other thing was, did you supplement your income initially with the college degree stuff before the comedy work started coming? The answer was yes there. So I'm going to ask one more obnoxious Harvard question, and then we'll put it back to you. And that's, did you hear any good stories when you were at Harvard about Rivers Cuomo from Weezer?
Ooh, okay. I don't know if I heard specific stories. We knew he went there, and then get this, when I was in the Lampoon, they like Weezer came back to visit, and so like sometimes what we do is like honor, celebrities that come through. They're not always alumni,
Yeah.
but
Is it the Pudding Award or something like that? The Golden Pudding?
oh yeah. So that's specifically for like the putting theatricals. So like a great drag show slash musical theater group that
Sure.
I wasn't a part of, but they do that as well. Everybody does it because it's basically just a way for the students to hang out with celebrities and like celebrities oftentimes don't know the difference. They go, oh, I mean it's Harvard, so I guess this is an award anyway.
Right.
So but no, he knew what the Lampoon was because obviously he went there. And so yeah, we got to like meet him and yeah, it was really cool. And I think he, I guess because he had gone and then left and then come back at a certain point or something,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, very, very fascinating.
Well, hey,
That's all I
back to you
knew.
here. This special is new to us, to you. You filmed it a while ago, post production, all that kind of stuff. What's the rest of 2024 looking like for you? Because with IMDb, it's really tough to tell what's upcoming versus what is already done, but you can't say is upcoming, that kind of a thing.
Oh, totally. Yeah. They have a weird system too. Yeah, I mean, I think like so let's see what is happening this year. I've just finished working on a show like in a writing capacity for Comedy Central that'll come out in, a year. Animation I
That
tend to
Golden
write in.
Axe.
Yeah, Golden Axe. So that just got announced that it's a show. It's based on a Sega video game. But that basically, yeah, it will probably come out in 2025 if all goes smoothly, kind of thing. And animation does tend to take a while after the writing process, as I've learned.
Right.
So yeah, so that waiting on that, and then a few like some things I can't maybe explicitly say, but some like acting stuff, and then eventually yeah, hopefully more writing and continue to do stand up. But I think because I came out with a special, yeah, I'm luckily like I feel good about stand up and continuing to develop whatever the next thing might be, but it probably won't be for a while kind of thing.
So when you started in stand up, because you mentioned doing it in high school, what were or who were your main influences, the kind of material you did back then?
Ooh, yeah, so I probably started around 2000, like 2010 and 11 is maybe when I started to get really like into fandom of it, and then probably didn't get up until 2011 or so. But I remember I remember really like probably one of the first specials I saw was Here and Now. Ellen DeGeneres. And then like thereafter, I think because I got Comedy Central around that time, like cable around that time too. So saw like consumed everything from Comedy Central, which was some online, but again, it's like not nearly the amount of volume as today. But there was, Eliza Schlesinger and I liked watching Last Comic Standing, so I think a lot of crossover there. And there was, I mean, Anthony Jeselnik. I remember loving his one, one-liner style and twists. And yeah, and I mean, I always was a big fan of like Chris Rock and Margaret Cho and a lot of and Bobby Lee from Mad TV and like comedians who were kind of spanning, into movie stardom and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like those were kind of the big names that jumped out. But overall, like, Sarah Silverman, I feel like it was just sort of I tended to like the ones who were I feel like the style at the time too was very like kind of shock factor a little bit. And I think as a teenager too, you're like kind of, so I mean, especially me, I was a bit of a nerd, so it was like anytime you heard somebody say like a offensive joke or something, you'd be like, oh my god, I can't believe they said that, but you giggle because you're just like a teenager who hasn't heard that before, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I feel, and like Family Guy for instance being like a good example of that too, so I feel like that was also really big. That was a trend. Roasts were really big at the Comedy Store kind of when I was going in college a lot. And yeah, I just, I think those were always, it was always like I would probably never be able to do them because I couldn't take it as well. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be feel bad if I was mean to somebody outright, but watching it as a spectator, I was like pretty impressed with good writing and, if people were able to like come around and hug it out at the end kind of thing.
yeah, sure.
So yeah, I feel like those really stick out in my mind, and it's evolved so much since, but that was kind of what was going on at the time.
Did you ever have older comedians try and take you under their wing and go like, "You don't know what funny is because you haven't watched the Marx Brothers," and then make you
Oh,
watch the really primitive stuff?
that's funny. I mean, I think I felt the pressure to for sure of like, and I've watched a lot now. But yeah, I mean, I guess it was sort of like I didn't have, I mean, luckily, I think people weren't too keen on maybe taking someone like me under their wing, knowing that it was like it could not be a good look. I was like, as a 16-year-old girl.
Fair.
So that's good, I was safe in that regard. And yeah, I think I've had input from friends and everything over time of hearing like, oh, that's actually what I got to watch, oh, those are the greats. And I think because I really found comedy in a vacuum, almost like I would hear my parents talk about it, but they're considerably older and not cool to me at the time, right? So I don't think I took their advice. And then I would probably find on my own, so it was like whatever was playing at that exact moment on TV. Versus, yeah, I think as I got older, like kind of delving more into the history and stuff that was, predated my time, of course. But yeah, so I think yeah, it's been good to hear, I think, from people like what their versions of, who they look up to. And it makes total sense because I think sometimes when you watch an original person or like a, Richard Pryor or like a movie, like even I hadn't seen Borat like initially, that not that, but I think like that was, I know, so defining and such a turning point for comedy for folks. And then watching it later and being like, oh, okay, a lot of things have been derivative of this since, and I've seen those things, but I wasn't aware of maybe how they actually were borrowing from earlier stuff. So that's how it goes.
Did you eventually get hipped to Andrew Dice Clay and Rodney Dangerfield and that era of comedy?
Yeah, I guess so. And I had seen Rodney Dangerfield like before I realized now. And I think as a kid, I was just like, I don't know what's going on with this guy because I didn't get it probably. But yes, eventually as well.
Did you ever hear the Rappin' Rodney track that he had his comedy rap record?
I don't know if I did actually. I think I've maybe bits of it, but no, I don't think I've listened all the way. Probably should. That's a good one.
Don't expect very much, but
Okay.
know that at the time it was really innovative. But of
Right,
course,
right.
taste standards were much lower. But
Okay.
back to you. It's very exciting to hear that there's a lot coming up. It sounds like more or less this is where you wanted to be from the beginning. Earning a full time living as a performer, entertainer, but being diversified.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think like I understand the value of, dialing in and what's that, like specializing, of course. And I
Sure.
think But I feel like what's cool about this field and mini now, it's like you do have to wear a lot of hats anyway. So if you are into that, like that's great. And then on top of that, like then you just don't get tired of one thing. I think if I do, if I do like for instance, I was in this writer's room for a while and even that it's not that long. I think like it's a a standard size of a writer's room maybe, so it's like 5 months or something.
Hmm.
And that even to me, I could be like, okay, this is, I'd like to, have a little bit more time so I can focus on acting or focus on, comedy or whatever. And so, inevitably the job ends and then you get to kind of do other stuff. So, I kind of I think it would be hard if I was purely focusing on one thing year round, and I feel like I benefit from the fact that it's naturally kind of like, hey, you're out of a job, time to work on something else, and luckily, yeah, and then I think luckily it's not like, doing stand-up comedy and like quilting where it's like completely it's not feeding into itself, though maybe those two things could. You can make your own merch. But I think like,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I think like luckily there's, I feel like when I am in a writer's room pitching jokes and trying to make other people laugh, who are, also really funny and they're making me laugh, like I get better at stand-up comedy when I'm going and doing a show at night. Like I'm maybe quicker that night because I'm used to, thinking of things off the cuff a little bit more.
Hmm.
So dealing with, hecklers or not even just like stuff that happens in the room that you can like comment on immediately. So I think there is, I think when I was growing up, I was always the kind of person who did like to do a lot of things and tried to, not just specialize in one thing. I mean, you really can't as a student say because you're taking all the subjects.
Right.
So I think I've been, yeah, I'm happy that like that's a thing that can happen in the real world, even if it's, sometimes maybe too much, but it seems to be like this is a good field for that.
Hmm. Well, two comedy nerd questions, and then I'll let you go. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. The first one is in terms of performing. Uh, when you come off stage, the average person maybe doesn't realize that it takes a while to come down and decompress and be a normal human being that's not fidgety. How do you unwind after a set?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that is very true. I mean, I think like I'm often I'm often going to my car. Like if it's like, I'm leaving just a regular old show. I walk to wherever I parked, which is oftentimes kind of far because parking in LA sucks. So
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think walking outside can be nice. Other ways, yeah, I guess like I don't actively do anything, but that is a very good point. Like I think if anything, it's just good to like have alone time and like not have to immediately respond because there's maybe not like your brain's not fully in normal state of response. So yeah, I think just like having a little space or like having a little time to like sit and go through, make sure, oh yeah, I did say that joke. Oh shoot, I missed one. Okay.
So,
Well,
so to rudely interrupt you, it's not
yeah.
spending 3 hours at the venue and closing down the bar and being with the other comics. It's you did your job, you got out of there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I guess, of course, love to hang, if that's possible. But I think like if I'm in a rush or if it's kind of like, all right, it's late, it's time to go, like I prefer to probably just wind down and leave.
Got it. And the last question for you is what's the main passion outside of comedy? And the reason I ask that is because normally when you have what's perceived as a fun job, at first you go, I'm getting paid to do this. I'm going to do as much as possible of this. And, oh, a chef gets to work with food. They get to eat good stuff. And then you realize you burn out on all that stuff. And then what you do in your free time is usually the exact opposite of your work. So, what do you do when you're not writing comedy, performing, etc.?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. I feel like I don't really have like a great thing because I think for so long, yeah, it's like, well, that's all I do. So all waking moments need to be that. But I will say
Yeah.
now, I'm lucky me and my fiance love to go eat or like he'll cook often and I'll eat. So I think just like, enjoying good food or like a nice night, where you get like a little cocktail, a little dinner, and get to try a new spot. Like I'm all for that. And I know that's not really like a very creative passion. That's more just a consumption passion.
So
That's
you're
great.
not one of the secret guitar comics.
No, God, no. Nobody wants that from me.
You never know. I think 50% plus of comedians are really guitar players who want to be musicians but couldn't hack it as musicians.
Oh, I mean, hey, yeah, they could always incorporate it into their comedy. I've seen that, and that could be really unique. But yeah, that's hilarious. I do believe like comedians also always want to be rappers, and
Oh,
and so there's a lot of that. I mean, talking about Rodney Dangerfield, I guess. But
rapping
yeah, I
Rob.
feel like there is sort of a charisma coming from musicians that comedians really envy.
Wow. Well, the Rappin' Rodney, for the record, I believe was written by Barry Sobel. So comedy writers do have a purpose. But
Hell
thank
yeah.
you for your time. Looking forward to eventually seeing you live in New York. And keep up all the greatness. Exciting to hear that we have animated and non-animated projects coming from you soon.
Hell yeah, yes, always. Thank you so much, Jared.
Paltrocast.